Hi all, this is a video to dig a little bit deeper into the first few parts of the curriculum-based assessment assignment, in specific focusing on deconstructing the standards. And I know we talked a little bit about this in the overview video, but this is just sort of to go over step by step. So if you want, you can open up your CBA template and work along with the video as well. And I hope that it's helpful, since we're, if we were meeting face to face, we'd be able to work on this together in class. So just trying to walk you through it a little bit through this video. Again, the first thing that you're going to want to do is identify your curriculum standard. And so you're going to want to go to the NCDPI website to start out and select the standard that you want to work on. As already stated in the previous video, you're going to go ahead and put the standard and then the clarifying objectives here. As I noted before, some of the standards, like if I were to look at the 7th grade standards for science, and like if I looked at their standards that relate to whether this standard 7.8.1 has the water cycle, the atmosphere, weather, climate, and how it affects people. That might be a lot of clarifying objectives to include in one curriculum-based assessment assignment. And so if you have a standard like this that has 6 different clarifying objectives, if I were to create a summative assessment on all of those, my students' heads would probably explode, and it wouldn't probably be a great assessment experience for anyone. So in that case, you can feel comfortable selecting fewer clarifying objectives to focus on. For my example, which you all can feel, I'm going to leave my example here, but when you do yours, you can just cut all of this out and put your own material in there. And I'll go ahead and put mine all in blue so that you'll know that that's my example. And yeah, you can just cut it out and paste your own in there. In my example, I'm going to be focusing on forces in motion for 4th grade. To deconstruct your standard, again, you're going to be looking at the North Carolina unpacking documents. Some content areas have wiki pages. Looking at those materials will help you better understand what the general objective, all of the knowledge and reasoning and sometimes skills that kids are going to need to know how to know and do in order to meet the standard. So for mine, the main ideas in terms of knowledge, are basically contact and non-contact force. So kids in 3rd grade learn about forces in motion with regards to pushes and pulls, and then 4th grade they focus on magnets as having a both contact and non-contact force. So to build on what they learned in 3rd grade would be to remind them about, that force is a push or a pull, and also remind them that gravity is a non-contact force. Based on these clarifying objectives and the unpacked standards, some of the knowledge, areas of knowledge that the kids are going to need to know are like defining and giving examples of forces, the word attract, repel, because some students, one misconception that'll come up is that if something is not attracted to the magnet, then they think it's repelled by the magnet, but that's not really true. It's just not magnetic. So, getting the students to explore and be able to define or explain some of these concepts would be within this standard. And excuse my dog if you can hear her barking. She's going bananas because people are grading the road. And the other thing that here this is saying that students are going to have to explain how magnets produce motion with or without touching magnetic things, and same thing for electrically charged objects. So in order to explain those things, they're going to have to make some direct observations and be able to describe the behavior of those objects. So I put that on the knowledge side. Originally, I put it on skill because in science, observation is a process skill. So I'm kind of, now that I'm saying that out loud, I think that could be on the skill side. So I'm going to put it back over on skill, because after I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, maybe that's more like describing something could be on the knowledge side. So maybe what I'll do, I do want the students to be able to make observations of the behavior of electrically charged objects, and then based on that collect data based on that. So those are, parts of the scientific process skills that are important for students. So I'm going to include that here, and then maybe describing the behavior of electrically charged objects and magnets would be on the knowledge level. Okay. In terms of product, I don't know that in these objectives, there's not really any product level content here, but I did put down that I would like the students to be able to create models to demonstrate how the magnetic force field affects different materials or different metals. In terms of reasoning, in order to figure out whether something is magnetic or not, students are going to have to be able to make inferences based on observations, because magnetism is not, it's invisible. It's a non-contact, invisible force. So they will have to make inferences based on observations of magnets' behavior. So we'll add that. They're going to have to classify metals as magnetic or not magnetic. So classification is a reasoning skill. It's not super high level, but it is. They're going to need to be able to predict and make predictions and create explanations with regards to how magnets interact with different kinds of materials. And they're going to need to compare magnetism and gravity. So this is an example, and it's not totally complete because I would need to include additional reasoning targets that relate to my second clarifying objective here. So in this part, you don't have to write these as learning targets. We're going to write the learning targets below. You don't have to write incomplete sentences. You're just writing, what do the kids need to know? What do they need to be able to do? And you're going to list that, across the way here. Down here, now we're going to be writing learning targets based on these things. So these are the things that I decided that the kids are going to need to know. So my learning targets are going to relate back to these things that they need to know and do, and are going to relate back to the standards and objectives themselves. And remember, your learning targets should be written in student-friendly language. So I'm putting some examples here. I may have missed some things, and some of my examples, if I were going to use these to develop lesson plans, I might combine some of them in the same lesson. So these are, again, just examples, but these should be written, like I said, in student-friendly language. And here it's reminding you to think about the age of your students. So if you're teaching high school, your learning targets can be a little more complex compared to elementary school, or even fourth grade versus kindergarten is going to look a lot different. After I write my learning targets, I'm going to note what type of target it is and what assessment method I would use. So here, define and give examples of contact and non-contact forces. That's a knowledge level target, so I would just make an X there. And so I'm probably going to be using personal communication, like if my students are doing explorations, scientific inquiry explorations in class, I'll probably be using personal communication. And then in my summative assessment, I want to use, so for this unit, I want to use inquiry explorations where the students collect data and write predictions and conclusions in science notebooks, and that will be my primary formative assessment method. And then on my summative assessment, I would either use maybe a performance assessment where I give them a task, or a test. So I could put I would need to think about that more and decide. But so for right now, I'm going to put selected response and personal communication as my assessment methods for this. And so you would need to do that for all of the learning targets that you identify. Okay, and I ended up with 11 learning targets. Let me delete these rows, but you can always add on more rows if you need them. Okay, so thanks for watching this second video focused on deconstructing standards. Once you're done parts 1, 2, and 3, you're going to be submitting those for feedback before you move on to your assessment blueprint and developing your summative assessment. Thanks.